Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my season preview for the Alpine F1 team. First, we're going to take a look at some of the key personnel involved with this team. So for the Alpine team, they do have two different bases, one for the chassis and one for the engine. The chassis base is based in Enstone in the UK, whereas the engine department is based in Viry in France. Of course, this will be the last season with this team using Works Renault engines before they become a Mercedes customer team for 2026. And the dynamic, the dynamic and the blame game between the chassis department and the engine department for, the faults of this car that this team has produced has been kind of an ongoing thing for the last couple of years now. So it'll be really interesting to see, once it becomes a customer team from next year onwards, how things go on that front. The team principal, Oliver Oakes, of course, brand new, came in midway through last season after Bruno Famin left the team. But even though he is the team principal, it does kind of feel like he's team principal in name only. The executive advisor for this team is Flavio Briatore, who was team principal of this team when it was Benetton and when in its first iteration as Renault. And of course, he's somewhat infamous in F1 circles for his role in Crashgate, which happened a decade and a half ago. So, but nonetheless, it does feel like, especially with driver market decisions, it does feel like Briatore is the one calling the shots in a lot of cases, and Oakes is kind of just the one doing the day-to-day management. Technical director David Sanchez, they did poach him from McLaren at the beginning of last season. Interesting to see what he can do with a full slate, brand new car. And this was a team that made quite good progress through the season, so it'll be interesting to see how they start 2025. And like I mentioned before, their engine is Renault, the only car on the grid that uses the Renault engine, which at this point in time is generally considered to be the slowest of the four engines in F1. Now, taking a look at what this team's results from last season, this was a season that in the team last year that really had a absolutely wretched start to the season. They decided to bring a new aerodynamic concept for the start of 2024. I think they knew in advance that this was going to be a pretty tough year. They thought that the old concept they brought, so 2022, 2023, had kind of reached its development ceiling, so they decided with 2 years left in the regulations, they needed to bring a new concept. The car was very, very slow, it was overweight, and that I think led to their really poor performances for the first 2/3 of the season. But that being said, final third of the season, even ignoring Brazil, was pretty good, and they were arguably the fifth best team on track. And because of that, great Brazil result, the one that I've alluded to in quite a few of these videos now, it basically propelled them to sixth in the Constructors' Championship, leapfrogging both Haas and Racing Bulls, who I think on pace were slightly better than them for most of the season. So yeah, sixth with 65 points in the Constructors, but for qualifying pace, they ranked eighth with an average pole gap of 1.114 seconds, and race pace average minimum finishing position of 9.88, which ranks seventh. So again, not the sixth best team I would say in qualifying or race pace, but very, very opportunistic with that double podium in Brazil, and that allowed them to get sixth in the Constructors. When you look at this team's results the last 5 years or so, kind of like what I alluded to before with changing the concept, the aerodynamic concept of the car, the results for the last 5 years have kind of been on a downward trajectory, and then on the graph they're going up, which is again getting worse. 2020, pretty good season, of course helped us a bit by Ferrari's engine being nuked as well, and then their customers also getting nuked. So again, a bit of a step back 2021, but that was kind of the first year where I think Renault's ambitions, I think after they came back 2016, that was 2021, I would say, was the first real year where there became really serious doubts about their potential as a full works team, and I think 4 years later those results have kind of been borne out. 2022 they started the new regulations pretty well, but unfortunately 2023 took a step backwards, whereas their main rivals 2022 McLaren did take a big step forward. And then 2024, of course, with that concept change, big step backward. So I would expect this year, I would say upper midfield is kind of what they're going to be aiming for. Fifth place, I think, is probably going to be their target in the Constructors' Championship. I think he'll be competitive with Aston, competitive with I would say Haas as well, depending on how Haas's rear suspension and their tire management is. That's always a question mark with that team. But I think that being said, target for this year should be fifth place. Now, before we talk about their drivers for this season, I just want to talk about some of their drivers from this team's history. So this is looking at all drivers who have driven for the Renault/Alpine team, but not including the first Renault team from the 80s because that was a separate factor. I know a bit complicated, probably could have included them, but just for simplicity, we're just doing it this way. So Alonso, most Grand Prix driven for this team, 149. Ocon second on that list, 106. Hulkenberg third, 62. Fourth, Fisichella, 53. Fifth, Trulli, 48. Gasly sixth with 49. Seventh, Ricciardo, 38. Eighth, Petrov, 38. Ninth, Palmer, 35. And 10th, Piquet Jr. with 28. So it really shows that, outside of Alonso and Ocon, this is a team that's really cycled through its drivers quite a bit. Not a ton of consistency, even in the mid 2000s, when this team was really at its peak, winning championships with Alonso. When you look at podiums, the results become even more stark. Going off of podiums instead of points here probably could have gone the other way, but for podiums, Alonso leads there by a mile with 42. Second on this list, Fisichella with 8, and of course, Fisichella was kind of Alonso's number 2 driver during those Renault years, so it makes sense that he would be pretty high on the list. And then third, Ocon with 4, fourth, Kubica with 3, Trulli fifth, also with 3, 6th, 7th, Ricciardo and Gasly with 2, and then Heidfeld, Kovalainen, and Piquet Jr. and Petrov all with 1 podium. That 2011 season kind of counts as a Renault, kind of counts as a Lotus. That's kind of when the ownership was kind of changing hands. So again, you might count that as Lotus, you might count that as Renault. Now, talking about their drivers for this upcoming season, Pierre Gasly, of course, has been at this team for 2 seasons now. He is joined, for the start of the season at least, by Jack Doohan, young driver from Australia. I did a kind of a video talking about him and looking at his junior career in depth a couple weeks ago. And of course, there's obviously already quite a few question marks about Doohan, given that Alpine have basically signed Franco Colapinto as a reserve driver on a multi-year deal, which is something that's pretty rare for a reserve driver. But for Gasly, of course, he is from France, 28 years of age. I believe his birthday, did he have his birthday recently? I think he must have, yes. Eighth season Formula 1 this is. 153 Grand Prix starts with 436 points. Career best in the Drivers' Championship is 7th, and that he achieved that in 2019. That was a season, of course, split between Red Bull and Toro Rosso. So despite the fact that his 12 race stint at Red Bull was pretty horrific, he still was kind of good enough to finish 7th. Finished 7th in the Drivers' Championship in the end. I think, unfortunately for Gasly, that 12 race stint is really going to hurt his chances of getting signed to a top team again. It's never say never. Things can always change, things can happen, but I think it does definitely hurt his chances of being promoted, regardless of his results the last 3 or 4 seasons. Now, for Doohan, 22 years of age, this is his first full season F1. He did make his Grand Prix debut at the very end of 2024, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So 1 start, no points, his career best of 24th in the championship. And again, for Doohan, I do think there are a lot of question marks about how long he's going to last this season. Rumors are he has a 5-race contract, and then after that, if the results are not sufficient, he'll be replaced by Colapinto. So it could be a very, very short stint in F1. I think 5 races is really too short to assess a driver, realistically speaking. But, I guess, just having the honor of saying that you're an F1 driver does definitely help in your future, motorsport endeavors. So even if it's only 6 races, I guess it won't hurt, his future stock, in other series, whether that be endurance racing, whether that be Formula E, whether that be Indy cars, for example. Now, finishing up this video with taking a look at my quality and race model for Gasly and Doohan. This is definitely a battle, assuming it's, Gasly, Doohan do the full season together. I don't think this is going to be particularly close. And again, Doohan's a rookie, so some of this is guesswork. But modified race score, 2.19 for Gasly, negative 0.52 for Doohan. Percentage of team points, 81%. So again, this is with midfield model, so 100 points total for Alpine the team. predicts Gasly will get 81% of the team points, doing with 19, and a points difference of 79.81. Again, those aren't perfect comparisons. I know there's a bit of a mismatch there, but and then finishing position difference 2.83 in Gasly's favor. So again, in the races, it's predicting that Gasly will come out on top by a pretty hefty margin. Now, when you look at median qualifying delta, this is also one pretty big prediction here. It's predicting that Gasly will have a median qualifying gap of 3.55 tenths to do it. So that's pretty comprehensive. Not quite as big as Gasly Tsunoda's rookie season, but also definitely bigger than Tsunoda's second season. I think, assuming they do the full season together, that's kind of, I would expect qualifying gap to be somewhere in the middle of those two. Again, I think for Alpine, they're going to be probably going to be 5th, 6th, 7th in the constructors again this year. Should be, a solid midfield team. Gasly should have quite a few good results, but I do think a lot of the attention at this team will be on what happens with Dew and how long he lasts at this team. Should Franco Colapinto come in and replace him mid-season? Again, it'll be interesting to see how he does as well. He was quite close in both qualifying and race pace to Albon during his kind of call-up last season at Williams. Was a little bit crash prone, but to be honest, every Williams driver for the last 2 to 3 years has been crash prone as well. So it'll be interesting to see, should Colapinto come in, Gasly will be a really good benchmark. So if he can best Gasly, that would suggest, future is really, really bright for Colapinto. So there you go. That's all for my preview for Alpine's 2025 F1 season. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.